Good morning. Great to see so many of you here. Who knew, like even a year ago, that here we would be hosting our own super spreader event. Or SWEEP, and I'm the Industrial Program Director and Building Electrification Specialist. I've been with SWEEP for about 12 years. SWEEP is a nonprofit, and we promote energy efficiency, clean transportation, and beneficial electrification in 6 Southwest states, including Colorado. I'm also the director of the Colorado Beneficial Electrification League, or BEL-CO, and we're the main sponsor of this event, and I'll introduce the other sponsors in a couple of minutes. Before we get on with our next speakers, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to warm you up to the great agenda we have today by giving you a little background on BEL-CO and building electrification and what we hope to accomplish today. So who is BEL-CO? Well, we're a coalition of stakeholders from electric utilities, local governments, environmental groups such as SWEEP, the Energy Efficiency Business Coalition, Colorado Energy Office, et cetera. You can see the list of our current members here. And if there are people here representing these organizations, if you want to raise your hand or stand up, and anybody who wants to learn a little more about BEL-CO, talk to one of these people during a break. Thank you. As the name implies, we support beneficial electrification, and Keith will talk about what that is in a minute. And more specifically, our goal is focused on buildings where we've been really, and even more specifically, we've been focusing on the residential sector, promoting heat pump water heaters, and other efficient electric technologies. And we do hope to get into the commercial sector more in the next year, developing some best practices and stuff. And why do we do this? We do it because it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, and there are other benefits, improved air quality, often reduced energy costs. And in terms of climate change, I just want to mention that in Colorado, fuel use in residential and commercial buildings accounts for 10% of Colorado's total greenhouse gas emissions. And in addition, the upstream emissions from producing oil and gas accounts for another 20% of Colorado's total emissions, and the building sector indirectly accounts for a good chunk of that as well. So why does electrification contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions? Well, there's 2 reasons. First of all, because the electric technologies like heat pumps are very efficient. And secondly, as Dwayne just mentioned, the grid is getting much cleaner in Colorado. And as shown here, the 6 utilities or generation companies that provide 91% of Colorado's electricity have committed to reducing their greenhouse gas emissions from electricity generation by at least 80% by 2030, so that's huge. And what has BEL-CO been doing in the last 3 years? It was about 3 years ago that we got going. We had our first Electrify Colorado event in June of 2019. Maybe a couple of you were at that event. I was there, Keith was there. And since then, we've been really focusing. We decided early on we should focus on market development and 2 things: training of contractors and consumer awareness. So in terms of the training of contractors, we've had a nice collaboration among the utilities, 4 of the utilities just shown on the previous slide. Xcel Energy, Tri-State, Holy Cross, and Platte River Power have been doing a nice collaboration, sharing information about their heat pump contractor training to improve the quality of those trainings and make it available to more contractors, and that's been going really well. And in terms of the consumer awareness, last spring in 2021, we launched the Love Electric website, which hopefully a lot of you have seen. Here's a few highlights. We have all the utility qualified installers of heat pumps and heat pump water heaters listed. You can search at this first highlighted link there. And all the rebates from utilities or local governments are available at the next highlighted website shown there. Yes, you will be getting these slides later, but hopefully you know about some of these things. Lots of other useful information, and soon we'll be adding a new section about new homes. So far, all the information is really focused on existing homes. So what's going to happen in the next 5 years? Well, we think that the stars are really aligned for building electrification. Gas prices are higher. They probably won't stay as high as they are this year, but they'll be somewhat higher, making electric technologies more favorable. And Keith's going to talk about all the federal money, tons of money available to help fund heat pumps. Technology is really good. That's not really an issue. State and local policies, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, hopefully he will show up, are going to help. And we still have more to do on contractor training and consumer awareness, and we all have a role in contributing to that. So I'd like to thank our sponsors for today, and here's a list of the sponsors. And please visit with them during the breaks, and most of them have displays and tables set up here, and please talk to them. Thank you all to the sponsors for helping support this event. And just a few highlights of the agenda. As I mentioned, Keith's going to talk in a minute about the federal funding, and then Will's going to talk about the policies. And just highlight that at lunch, there'll be, just before lunch, a brief discussion. How can we collaborate and increase our impact? So as you're listening to the presentations this morning, just think about, well, what can we do? How can we work together? And we'll have a brief discussion about that. We have a cool demonstration of induction cooking happening at lunch with Chef Andrew over there. And then the afternoon session is focused more on new buildings and how to make more healthy, efficient, and electric new buildings. And we think the agenda is fabulous, and you should stay to the end anyway, but as an added incentive, you could win valuable prizes if you stay to the end. We have 3 prizes to give away, and there'll be 3 drawings throughout the day. The first one during the morning lunch break, or right before the morning lunch break. And if you stay until the end, then we'll decide, like, of the 3 people who win, which prizes do you get? So we have the cool bike pictured here, which I don't think has arrived here yet, so you might have to come back here and pick it up. But electric bike worth $1,300, funded by Xcel Energy. Thank you very much. And then we have an electric lawnmower worth like $300, and a induction hot plate worth like $150. So those are the 3 prizes. So if you stay till the end, you could win one of those. And now just a couple of housekeeping things before we move on. I want to thank Jeremiah, who's sitting in the back and keeping all the technical stuff together. For those of you online, first of all, hello to the Zoom world. If you have any issues, contact Matt Fitzgibbon, and somebody will put his contact info into the chat. For the people here, if there's an emergency, follow the exit signs, and signage and staff will help us get out of the building and proceed to a corner of the lot. Restrooms are out here. Yeah, you've probably seen them already, and you've probably already also seen that there's coffee and water and food behind us. Okay, so now I will introduce Keith. Keith Dennis is the president of the Beneficial Electrification League, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, whose mission is to increase understanding of the benefits of electrification by promoting the market acceptance of beneficial electrification. He is also the CEO of Electrification Strategies, LLC. Keith has an interdisciplinary background in engineering, business, and law. He worked for nearly a decade at NRECA. I never know how to say that, Enrica, whatever. He was vice president of consumer member engagement. At some point, he coined the term environmentally beneficial electrification. So in a way, Keith is like the father of beneficial electrification. And fun fact, in 2014, someone at Energy Star gave Keith an award for efficiency in procreation because he and his wife had twins at that time. So
I did get that award for efficiency in procreation, and the kids are 8 now, and I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it has made me very efficient. Thank you so much, Neil. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks to Tri-State for being a host. Thanks to BEL-CO and all the folks who went out and created the chapter. We're a national organization. I've met and worked with a lot of you, and there's passionate group of people really volunteering their time to put this forward. Even the sponsors, the people, I know them personally. You see like Will Lang over here, just stepped out of the room, Matt Baker, all these folks. If you get a chance to talk to them, everybody is doing a great job supporting this organization. And it's really the strength of what we're going to do is what we're doing together and learning from each other. I hope you have time to network. This is stuff that cannot be done by any one organization. So this is an organization of organizations, and what we're trying to do is figure out how to all work together across environmental groups, utilities, state regulators, state agencies, and everything. So I also see Kent back there from the CREA, so thanks for sponsoring. He's great with the co-ops. I think that Neil mentioned our vision or mission in the introduction. We're really, our vision is for a future for beneficial electrification to be accepted as a necessary strategy to meet economic, consumer, and environmental goals. And I think that kind of comes down to, back when we first started this, just looking around at how you would even get to a low carbon future, it goes through electrification. You basically cannot have a low carbon future if you have vehicles, millions and millions, tens of millions of vehicles, hundreds of millions of vehicles maybe, burning gasoline and fossil fuels being burned everywhere. You just can't do it. So beneficial electrification is the way to get there. Our mission is to help people to understand how to do that, how to work together to make that happen. Some people ask, isn't all electrification beneficial? And certainly electricity has been one of those things that has really improved the quality of life of folks. It's unimaginable to think of our life without electricity, washing dishes by hand and candle lights and things like that. So electrification is great, but it's not always going to be beneficial to everybody. You need to, it needs to be done in a way that people see it as beneficial. And generally speaking, we have 4 pillars that make that happen. Saving people money, helping the environment, improving product quality and quality of life, and fostering a more robust and resilient grid. And just a very kind of layman's example of how this works, would it be good to electrify every vehicle out in that parking lot? I would say, you could electrify them and it could be good or it could be bad. And if everybody's charging those vehicles with a certain power, all charging it at once, it'd probably be a bad thing. Electric rates would go up, it would be bad for the environment. If everybody's charging them off-peak with a certain type of electricity, you would have lower environmental impact, lower rates, and it would be a good thing. So it's not necessarily electrify everything all the time. It's figuring out where it's beneficial and focusing there. What is the beneficial electrification story? This is a friend of mine, Jim Sayers, tells a story. I don't think I was even, I'm a little bit past this generation, but he put in for his first electric screwdriver through the mail and got this in the mail. And he said, when I got it, it was like kind of cool. I could go into different places. It was certainly better than cranking things by hand, but this thing was kind of wimpy. Wouldn't really turn that last part of the screw, and it was sort of like, just okay, But nowadays, look at that same technology, and this is what builders use at their job site. They don't want to have cords everywhere. They're replacing their batteries, switching them around, and then now it's everywhere. And I think that's what we see with electric technology. It's like, is this really working here? Is this the right application? This does do this? Well, it's certainly better than doing this the other way. And then, eventually it just becomes a big thing. And that's going to be a trend that you'll see over and over again. This is my friend Jim here. He was not a happy camper. Pulling that thing, he said the first year that pulled it, start right away, and then it got harder and harder and harder. And after, he's a happy guy. Look at him. He's pushing the button, it's starting, there's no smoke, it's not vibrating. And I have one where I use my leaf blower inside with my kids whenever they're crying. I just throw the leaf blower right in their face, And they love it. You know, they can blow all my papers around if they want to mess up my office. I could not do that with a gas one. You know, I would not bring a gas leaf blower into my office. I would be smelling like gas for days. So beneficial. It improved his life. He's smiling. He's not angry. Now, this is the kind of explosion. When I first started doing this, I think in 2015, there was like a couple things here, a water heater, a pump, and a car. And the car was a little golf car, actually. You can understand why people like a Tesla or like a sports car. You hit the accelerator, it goes fast. You know, that thing in your driveway, your neighbors might get jealous. These other things, it's a little bit, harder to kind of understand if you're not in that market. But the idea is the same thing. These products work better. That thing over there is a grain feeder. You can put cows all together and then have like a grain feeder come and go overhead and just drop food in. You can space the cows together closer. You got tractors now that while they can't go and plow all day, they can go out like a Roomba, just out and then come back on their own and plow something without anyone sitting there. That tractor doesn't have a seat or steering wheel, and the joke is that it's for the farmer who's lost their rear end and doesn't know which way to turn because you don't have a seat and you don't have a steering wheel. Rock crushers, school bus, we call that the yellow billboard for why electrification is good. It doesn't vibrate. There's not a lot of noise. There's no smoke. It's got good torque. The leaf blower you can use inside with your kids when they're crying, and everything like that. And so that was my slide for a while. And then, oh my goodness, more stuff. That UTV is quiet. You can hunt with it, and then the deers or whatever you're hunting don't even hear you coming. Forklifts, you don't need to vent. Automatic lawnmowers, bikes you can give out for prizes and make people stay to the end of meetings, things like that. Recycling trucks. And these are big companies, Caterpillar, Mack Truck, Polaris. They don't invest in this technology for fun. They're betting on this market. So it's coming, and it's going to be all over the place. And like the screwdriver, it might be like a few people trying it out, but it's going to be everywhere. And then, of course, look at this, the big driving white billboard. So if you can get a electric Zamboni, get one. What's driving this? All those things that I showed you before, I don't think that's much policy driven other than that there might have been some government funding for batteries. It was better improvement. But a lot of people here, I think, are here because of this policy consideration. Electricity is getting cleaner over time. And if you are able to get somebody onto electricity, if you're able to get them onto electricity in 2005, they're 30% better on average now if they're using the same product the exact same way. And if you went to a building in 2005 and said, how can I improve my carbon footprint by 30%? You would be saying, like, make the walls thicker, change this system out, change that system out, and in reality, the grid has done it for people. And so you want to get on that ride if you can. At some point, you get better than the alternative. And then on the other side, I used to say this is a reason why utilities want to be involved. Load growth. It's good for keeping rates down. If you have flat or declining load growth, you have poles and wires that are sitting there not used, and bringing in revenue is a good thing. It makes business sense. But now, with all the talk about MISO capacity constraints, I use this more to say, this is a high case in NREL study of how much electrification there might be. And people say, oh, can we add this stuff to the grid? That slope is the same as it's been basically always. Like, we've done this. Like, this used to be a field. There was no electricity here. Like, can we add new electric loads? Yes. It's going to be done over time. Everybody's not going to electrify tomorrow, and it's really not that hard of a challenge to add new things. These new loads are going to be flexible. It's a challenge we're up for. Now to the part that I think this is billed as is the investment. A huge investment by any measure. This is kind of historical spending on climate. This is recent spending on climate. The first thing I'll talk about is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, known as bipartisan infrastructure law. This type of funding passed through Republicans and Democrats in Congress. It's kind of bread and butter type stuff. That big square there is just transportation stuff like roads and bridges. There's some energy stuff, $100 billion, a lot of money. It's not the bulk of it, but it's also a little bit more traditional spending than the IRA, which I'll talk about. This is literally a picture of me when this came out. My hair has changed colors to white, but I was very, very, very confused. I got a memo. This is like the first couple of lines of the memo. The memo was like 10 pages of all of these things that are in there. $7.5 billion for charging, $5 billion for grid resiliency in one way, $5 billion for grid resiliency in another way, $3 billion for grid resilience in another way, $225 million for codes, $500 million for schools, $3.5 billion for weatherization, $500,000 for energy conservation, $500,000 for state energy program, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not worth going through this point by point, but I'll just say it's a lot of stuff, and that's going to be the theme. I'll try to help digest it in a minute. But I say it's like being in a waiting room with the federal spending, but also being in a marathon. So I have this picture of like a marathon waiting room where like you don't want to go in the waiting room too early because you'll get tired of being in the waiting room. So you got to pace yourself in this waiting room or something, because it's literally dealing with the federal government is slow, and it's a 5-year program, and it's not like other stimulus programs. We're not only just trying to spend it as fast as possible. We have some time to spend this. They set it up, I think, over 5 years, possibly so that if the administration doesn't change, it's not going to just kind of go back and forth. This is a durable type of program. BEL's strategy is to try to digest this for people and make it somewhat possible to understand. And so we've created these two programs that have logos, Electrify School Buses and Weatherization Electrification together. And with the Electrify School Buses, we really got out there. We got a lot of folks to apply for school buses. It was a very easy process. We think we probably got tens to hundreds of millions of dollars worth of buses to folks by basically pulling out one tiny line out of that memo and saying, here's where you want to focus your time today. The next one is weatherization and electrification together. There's a lot of money for weatherization. There's a lot of money for electrification. But you're not going to go in and figure out, this code, the other thing. It's got to be a program. Consumers are not going to, be looking at this thing and getting lawyers to look at bills and applying for grants. It's got to be someone who can offer them something. And so what we're offering them is weatherization and electrification together. We need to make it easy. We need to digest the grants. They don't need to hear about 401(3) or 401(d) or IIJA or IRA or, they just need to know what they're going to do. So this was them signing the bill, and then there's an actual picture of me that day. It was a terrible day for me. My head exploded, and that's where my white hair comes from, I guess. And then I also love this other picture because it's inflation reduction, and it's them printing money, and I don't get it. I don't understand how it works. It's spending money. But I love that picture. I'm going to go through this. This is like I feel like this is a pretty dry part here, but it's a tremendous amount of implementation work just for them to figure out, all the drafting mistakes and how to write the tax code and what actually qualifies. There's the IRS is trying to figure that all out. There's programs where the specifics are unknown, especially where they have to pass through the states. And Neil reminded me to lower expectations about how fast all this stuff's going to happen when it has to go through the states. Probably talking about at least a year, right? And Will can tell us differently if he has different thoughts. We're going to be working with federal agencies to provide input. And then I just want to say that I'm not giving you tax advice today. So if your auditor is like, hey, Keith said something, it's nope, not me. Talk to your tax attorney. So one of the things that kind of comes to mind with electrification that everybody sees in whatever the newspapers are is this tax credit for electric vehicles. $7,500 for a new vehicle and $4,000 for EVs. And this kind of can illustrate some of the problems right off the bat. They're trying to make EVs produced in the United States. So they say, produce the EVs in the United States. Well, a lot of EVs aren't produced in the United States. And so they're trying to figure out which cars even these tax credits apply to. And it's maybe, if you read it one way, none, And so they're sorting that out. And that's just a very high level and high visibility one. When you start getting into this other stuff that maybe 3 or 4 people in this room might have, actually read, there's all kinds of open questions like that. And we're going to see that. This is, I put here because we're focused on buildings, but, with these tax credits over time, does this impact whether we should plan ahead and have EV charging in buildings? If there's this much support for it. Tax credit, investment tax credit aimed at driving, again, labor, but also aimed at clean energy. And investment tax credits expand to things like thermal energy. I see Steffes is here. Geothermal, again, Will and water furnace. This is going to be a big deal for getting tax credits for things that otherwise didn't have tax credits. And some of these tax credits are actually refundable tax credits that nonprofits can take. So a hospital could, for instance, build a solar panel or put in a heat pump and geothermal and get a check from the government, and they could even potentially assign that to other people. So it could be something that makes this take off, but it's going to take a while to figure out. Residential energy tax credits are coming again. There's 25B. Biomass stoves, wind turbines, solar panels, fuel cells, solar. I didn't do it. Okay. Efficiency home improvement credits. These are the things, have you ever done TurboTax or been asked, did you do any efficiency upgrades this year? If you put in insulation, you can write it off, and it's $1,200 max. It's changed to $2,000, and it's every year you can do it. So if you're going to be improving your house, putting new windows in, putting new insulation in, putting new heat pumps in, you could do it every year. You could just space it out every year and take $2,000 tax credit every year. Efficient new homes and the Defense Production Act, $2,500 for zero energy ready homes, $5,000 for zero energy ready homes, $2,500 for Energy Star homes, and then some Defense Production Act money to help implement this. And then it sort of starts to get like, wow, they just pile this stuff on, right? Two new programs, one's called Homes and one I call HERA, I guess, is this big rebate programs, $4 billion each to give rebates out to folks. These are, this one is special enough that I made a prettier slide for it. The HERA Act is up to $14,000 for low-income homes, $8,000 for a heat pump, $1,750 for a heat pump water heater, clothes dryers, stoves, $840 for a stove. You can do panel upgrades, wiring upgrades, and weatherization. $14,000 if you're low income, for 100%. If you're above 80% median income to 120%, it will pay for half of your upgrade. This one has to go through the states, and this one is a point of sale rebate. So basically it's going to be, they're thinking like a buy down at the actual store where you'll be able to get, $1,750 right off a heat pump. So these things are all kind of stackable. The tax credits are coming right now, but all these things, like you can stack them on top of each other. And it goes to my thought. One is that, first of all, there's going to be a little bit of a political battle about this when it goes to the states. Hopefully Colorado is going to implement this stuff pretty well. But also, it's not an issue of money anymore. I mean, if people want tax credits to do this stuff, people might want to do it without the tax credits, but it's really the cost effectiveness for the consumer can be managed with this, especially if people are on propane, right? But it's also a delivery thing. This stuff isn't going to implement itself. We need to figure out how to package that, and that's what weatherization and electrification together is about. Electrifying a home without weatherization doesn't make any sense. You're going to have to oversize your equipment. People might not be comfortable. They're going to be complaining to you. You say, well, your heat's going out the window, going out the cracks in your house. You gotta at least do some weatherization while you're there. Weatherization with electrification doesn't make that much sense either. If you're already in there, if you want to electrify, like you're already in there assessing the place, you've already made the visit, you've disturbed the person, you've gone in, you're going to miss the opportunity if you don't do them together. And that's why we have We Together. And it's actually something that, while it's counterintuitive, if you're in this area and people just have air conditioners during the hottest times, they're actually terrible electric customers. They're bad for the grid. They're causing rates to go up. If you get them on a heat pump and weatherize their house, they're actually better for the grid. Even though they're using more electricity, they're using less at that critical time. And then they're using electricity when it's kind of warm out in the fall and the spring, and it's giving more revenue to the system, and it's paying for the upgrades that are needed for things like smart communications. So it's really a good idea for everybody to do this stuff together. It's about customer engagement, and this is sort of where we go back to the future a little bit. And we've done this stuff before. These are some ads from the past when people were electrifying homes, and this is the flameless water heater in the closet that doesn't, have a flame, and that's getting rid of the roaring furnace. And see these people there in that house, comfortable and everything. And then look, that's today. That's a mini split in the back, and it's basically the same kind of looking commercial, So we're still talking about comfort, lifestyle. Back then they had a thing called Live Better Electrically, and they had an all-electric house. It was a medallion house, and they actually had Ronald Reagan doing like little jingles and stuff, and sort of maybe we're moving back towards a place where you could talk about an all-electric house. Another Back to the Future thing is try it, you'll like it. We used to have events like this before my time in the 50s and stuff. They'd have stoves that people were trying and cooking demonstrations, and try an electric stove, try an electric dishwasher, and you'll like it. And now we have ride and drives, and we have people trying the UTVs, and we have people trying the forklifts. We have people trying the houses. This is a story out of, well, that one's in Beartooth, Montana. Great story. I probably don't have time for. This other one I think is in Alabama. The builder did not want to build all electric. It was a connected community DOE grant. They built the whole community, and they're never going to build anything but it now. And it's just like, it's these things. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. You try it. Oh, that's not really something that's actually better. And then all of a sudden, it's like, wow, why weren't we doing this the whole time? And I think we're going to see that over and over again. And that's why you got to get this stuff in people's hands. You got to get them blowing the leaf blower at their kids inside, and then they'll buy them. Once they buy electric stuff, they're not going to go back and get a new gas can and start pulling on the rope anymore. So it's a performance upgrade. That house is smart. It's got a lot of stuff that you can do. Your car can drive up and turns your heat on. You can put it in away mode. You can put it in energy saver mode. You can put it in comfort mode. All this stuff's happening with electricity. Cooking with electric, I have small kids. I'm always afraid they're going to burn my house down. I might go ask my wife if they burn it down tonight. They can't burn it down if I don't have a flame. And so I like that one better. I don't care how my food tastes because it's all kids' food anyway. So, I just like the safety. I like not having, a flame. This struck with me a while ago. It was the head of PGM put this on, and I went back and found it. You can see prosperity is where the light's on, and that's just the idea is that electricity is good. It's really, you want to be in one of those places that's lit up. You want to have the products that make your life better, and that's what we're here to do. When this stuff improves people's lives, we should find it. We should help. We don't have to force it where it's not better, but where it is, we should be doing everything that we can. The best way to follow us, we do have some sign-up stuff on our website, but is to follow us on LinkedIn. You can find us there. And then I want to just briefly give a plug for this BE Toolkit. We used to have a spot on our website about all the stuff about like case studies and things. And then John Michael Cross here, he's sitting right there. He's going to raise his hand. I was going to call him up here. Put this together. It's a great place to go for broader stuff. Love Electric has a lot of stuff on heat pumps. This also has some other things. It's a good place to go to hear about the case studies, to find out what other folks are doing in other states. It's more of a national thing. And understanding electrification, end-use appliances, how to make a plan and deploying. So I ask you to reach out there. John Michael Cross's email is here too. Did I miss anything, John?
No, you got it. We made this tool for you all. So it's your idea, Keith, but come to this meeting, talk about a lot of cool stuff, and send it back to your home co-op. Like, okay, go talk about it and figure it out. And so what this toolkit's trying to do is give you something to kind of base conversations around, maybe point your colleagues to, so they can kind of experience what was something to talk about at this meeting. But then as you go further into the toolkit, there's calculators, planning documents, other ideas kind of get the show on the road. So it's not designed to like read start to end. There's different sections kind of for different people to go up. But we're still rolling it out. There's 40 pages, but we still got more to do. Love any feedback if anybody has about things that add or do differently.
Okay. There's actually microphones, I think, right in front of you, so the people online can hear. and Mike, John Michael just put in a great plug for the idea that we're all going to leave this meeting, and sometimes I do the closing of things, but I got like 2 more minutes, and just say, the idea is like, what are you going to do different? How are you going to do it? We don't want to just drop the mic here and then go, on our merry way. The idea is that you're all the stakeholders. This is a leadership summit. You're the leaders in your community. I know people here, and I know what co-ops they're from, or from communities and climate action partnerships and Rios and everything. So you take this back and you figure out what to do. This is a tool that helps you do that. We're resources to help you do that. You're all resources to help you do that. But this stuff does not do itself. It's not like naturally, on the agenda of most Americans to, design, how to get the product that they need there when they need it, and the people they're trained to put it in and all that stuff. It's a logistical challenge that we're all here for. And so again, this is the Beneficial Electrification League of Colorado. Super excited to be here, and that's my presentation. I think, do we have time for questions?
15 minutes.
Okay, so we have time for questions if there are any.
I think if you just push your button when you talk, and the microphone comes on.
Can you hear me? Am I on the mic? Cool. Well, great presentation, Keith. I'm Jim Height, independent writer and consultant, and recently a part of the BEL team. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the difference between the electrify everything philosophy and the beneficial electrification philosophy, and the viewpoint you've talked about, do no harm. In other words, sometimes it's not appropriate to electrify everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of give a backstory to say, in 2016, when we started talking about beneficial electrification, people actually thought that the best thing to do for the environment was to use gas in your house. Because the idea was that the grid is fossil fuel, you lose 2/3 of it into generation, and for decades, that line was just up here, and it wasn't going down here like this. And almost as soon as that kind of came out, there were some other pathway projects, everyone said, let's electrify everything, like yesterday. It was like emergency. It's like some things won't even be better to electrify right now, like even for the environment. Like, it doesn't work like that. You're not going to save money every time. You're not going to, it's not good to go in and rip somebody's brand new furnace out and put a new one in, because you had to make that furnace, you had to put it in there. Like, it's just not always, So the idea is that you find these things that everybody can agree on. And it's, does it save money? Does it help the environment? Does it improve quality of life? There are so many opportunities to do that aren't being done. You'll have people say, well, we need to electrify everything, and they'll get in this argument. And the first thing that happened to us was there was a study put out that electrification was going to cost like $20,000 per home. And it assumed that you were going into every home and ripping whatever was out there and putting electric stuff in. And because we were called beneficial electrification, and because we were saying beneficial electrification is when you save money, we could just say, what are you talking about? We didn't say do expensive electrification or do electrification where it's bad for the environment. We said do beneficial electrification. And I'm sitting in my house, I sit there every day, I look out my window, and I can see a unit that looks like that, but it's only an air conditioner. And they have ductwork, and they have a furnace. And I have one at my house too, for the downstairs. And they're not being switched out. It only costs a little bit incrementally. That's a beneficial electrification thing that millions of Americans could do. And instead we argue about these kind of hypothetical situations where, you're doing something that somebody doesn't want. So I just think to take it off the table, just say, let's focus on where it's beneficial. That way, we're all nodding our head, of course. If it helps save the environment, it helps. And we sort of call it this Hippocratic Oath. You don't want to go in and leave somebody with higher bills, because that's going to be the news story, and people are going to say, see, that's why you don't want to do this stuff. It's also very helpful for the IOUs in the room. I know Excel's here, because if it's beneficial, it's sort of like there's a thing called a market failure, which is what energy efficiency experts like Neil work on. You're really supposed to focus policy on things that aren't going to happen because there's a market failure. And it's supposed to be in the public interest. And so if we say this stuff's not happening and it's in the public interest, you can justify spending federal funds on it. If it's only beneficial to a subset of folks, like the people who sell products or the people who sell electricity or the people who are just environmentally minded and not for the consumer, you can't spend tax money on it. It's everybody's money. So I hope that answers the question, but it's very, very important. We've kind of taken a stand on it. You heard the term beneficial electrification. That's because we really push that as the term of art that we're using. I got to okay that I answered this question. Probably beat the dead horse with it. Other questions? How many of you have beneficial electrification programs that you're working on? Almost everybody? Half of the people? Half the people. Does anybody get pushback about politics? Like, is there kind of like a pushback to electrification in Colorado? Yes? How do you handle it? I saw a really good Facebook post from somebody who might be in the room today that said, are you going to be able to electrify all these vehicles? There's not enough electricity. And the answer was, we've been electrifying things for 75 years. You know, the new Walmart comes, we electrify it. I feel like sometimes this is like seen as an environmental thing or having an environmental benefit, and it's easy to divide people. Like, oh, that's for this reason or that reason, where people might just want a better car. And you know, if you were saying, hey, do you want to bring a business to, we'd hook them up for, you know, no problem. We got the electricity for that. And so I think one of the biggest risks to this whole thing is getting too political about it. And so I hope that we can keep politics out of it. So if I have a piece of advice for folks, it's just keep the politics out of it. This is about improved quality of life, better products, and that will maybe not get some riled up to energized, but it will also not get people energized against it. And so nationally, I see that as a huge barrier, that it's just perceived as political, like things that we've seen be political that don't need to be political in other arenas. So any other questions? I'm not going to keep you extra. Want to get to something else or no?
Not really a question, I'd just be interested in your perspective. In the headlines recently, you know, Newsom signed a bill outlining internal combustion engines. I can't remember the exact year. It was less than a week later, they're threatening brownouts because the grid couldn't, because of the temperatures, couldn't handle the load. So, I mean, the juxtaposition of those two things, you know, created a sort of a firestorm. I'm
Yes.
just curious about your position or your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, we do a lot of these meetings, and I think we were having a meeting the next day or something, right? So we dealt with it, you know, and same thing with MISO. MISO had a big capacity issue this year, and they said there might be brownouts. And, you know, I think that to focus on that like, to connect the two is really not a fair connection, because there's not a ton of EVs out there. If you go look on an average street, you see mass amounts of electric, you know, gasoline cars and a few electric vehicles. So it's not the reason why we have capacity constraints or not capacity constraints. That happens from time to time, all the time. There was not enough capacity here when there was no electricity. You build and then you're over capacity, you're under capacity. You're over capacity in Georgia, you're under capacity. California's got some tough things with shutting down some nuclear plants and everything like that. But if you look at the big picture, these loads are flexible, and basically, you know, you have these programs where they're trying to get people to charge cars off peak, and they're finding like no cars are charging on peak. Like, they're just not doing it because they're programmed a certain way. They know they're going to spend less money. You have the option to charge your car for cheaper one way. It'd be like if you could go to the gas station at a certain time and get half price gas. And then it's like, but the gas station was also just at your house. Like, you're just gonna be like, I'll just take the half, and you didn't have to do anything. You know, so people don't charge on peak. And then if you look kind of further, there's an argument to be made, or at least kind of a concept, that there's so much stored energy in these vehicles that they're actually gonna be a big help. The problem is actually air conditioning. At hot times. It's like you've got, everybody wants air conditioning. So electrify, weatherize the house, put a heat pump in, take the Windows unit out, helps the grid. then you have a car there, and the car cannot charge. But there's enough capacity, there's revenue coming into the system from the car, off-peak, paying for the poles and wires, and it's better for the system. Is that a soundbite that's going to work as much as like, hey, look how stupid California is? They just told everyone they need electric vehicles and then told them not to charge them. No, that's very understandable, but it's much more complicated than that. And I think at the end of the day, the right thing will happen, which is like, no, cars are actually going to be fine. People will have the electricity for the cars, and they'll actually be a solution. Batteries in vehicles will be a solution. Batteries in buses will be a solution. Batteries in trash trucks will be a solution. All this stuff, all this battery, it's going to help keep the prices down, and it's going to help keep the revenue come in. And I've been trying to figure out a more succinct way to say it, or maybe make a video. But I honestly, the league has kind of come up with a philosophy of to not be defensive to short-term things like that, just because we see them come and go, and it makes it look defensive. So I've heard some good things. I love the thing that I think it was Mountain Parks put on, just saying, we've done this for 75 years. We can electrify your car just like we could electrify your TV, you know. I hope that's a good answer. I don't know if it is. One more discussion topic?
I think the general concept of the vision, working smarter, not harder.
Yes.
There's a little soundbite.
Smarter, not harder. Yes. And it's actually tied to those 4 points that we say about the foster a more robust and resilient grid. You don't want to be adding loads that cause problems. And I would say if this stuff is causing a problem, then it could be that it's not beneficial. And sometimes the smart grid person at a utility is really excited about beneficial electrification, because if they're investing in smart grid and investing in things that let people change the time that they use things, that makes it more likely it's going to be beneficial. That makes it more likely it's going to be cost effective. That makes it more likely that it's not going to cause a grid problem. So it's not only the end use switching, but we have to make it cost effective for people. We have to make it good for the environment for people. We have to make it good for the grid. And if we do that, it will be beneficial. So we don't tackle the things that aren't beneficial, but those things that aren't beneficial today, if we can do the other work, it will become beneficial. It will be better for the environment. It will be off-peak. It will be so there is work to be done. Like, how many cars are smart vehicle to grid right now? You know, but maybe if we do the work. So smarter, not harder, could be something. All right. Well, thank you, Neil. Thanks, everybody.